Hello YouTubers, I'm SirLiva1. Today I am doing a discussion on these two games, which are Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII. Okay, I want to do this because lately I have been playing Final Fantasy VI for the very first time on my ZNES emulator for the past few days. Now I have to say that Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII are both two good games, but I have to prefer Final Fantasy VI over Final Fantasy VII. So I have to say it's better than Final Fantasy VII because it pretty much beats Final Fantasy VII with the storyline, the music, and the characters. First, I would like to talk about the storyline. Final Fantasy VI about this clown named Kefka who is trying to destroy the world. I mean, he's like this psychotic clown thing, and he wants to take over the world. And Terra, Setzer, and Locke and the other fighters, and they have to fight against this guy. Alright. And also, I feel it's a well put together storyline. Nevertheless, it made sense. Unlike Final Fantasy VII, the storyline wasn't clear enough. It was about this guy named Cloud Strife, in which everyone accuses him of being an emo, which he is kinda emo, in which he joins an army called Soldier, just so he can impress his childhood friend, which is Tifa Lockhart. Then he joins Avalanche along with Tifa, and they have to stop this guy named Sephiroth who works for Shinra. And not to mention the Aerith death scene when Sephiroth stabs her and Cloud just literally sits there and let it happen. And also, the live stream could not even save her, but it saves everyone else. Like, what the fuck is that? I mean, that's not really much of a good storyline. And plus, the other negative about Final Fantasy VII is all this side stuff you do. Like, for example, when you're in the wall market and you had to dress up as a girl in order to save Tifa, and also what other side stuff we had? Like, you had to go to that like festival thing that they had, in which Cloud and Tifa go on a date. Like, shouldn't you guys be worried about trying to fight Sephiroth rather than do all this side crap? I mean, it's okay to have some side stuff, but not too much. I mean, Final Fantasy VII just had too much side stuff. It made the game incredibly way too long. Also, I want to talk about the characters. In Final Fantasy VII, the characters wasn't that well flushed out. Cloud was kinda moody, and Barrett was kinda a little ghetto acting. Well, Tifa, Aerith, and Sid and others, they weren't much of a problem. But in Final Fantasy VI, the characters were much better, like Terra. I mean, she had a lot of emotion. Also, the others, there was some emotion in Final Fantasy VI, and there wasn't much emotion in Final Fantasy VII. I mean, the people were pretty much passive in the game. Final Fantasy VI, I mean, it was a little different. Alright. And oh yeah, the music differs a little in both of the games. Like, Final Fantasy VII's music was pretty good, but Final Fantasy VI's music, I found it to be better. I mean, it is better than Final Fantasy VII's music because it has more emotion to it. Like, you can actually feel the music. Final Fantasy VII, you really couldn't. You could some, but not as much as Final Fantasy VI. Actually, my favorite Final Fantasy VI soundtrack is the Caves of Narsh soundtrack because, I mean, it sounded so peaceful. and so relaxing. I mean, also I want to speak about the graphics. Now, according to me, I used to not like 2D games, and I always liked to play 3D games. I was really biased against 2D games, like when I was younger. Like, I thought 2D was not cool. I thought 3D was cool just because it was realistic looking. And you can walk around in 3D. Like, you're not using an overheaded view anymore, or a side-scrolling view. But I kind of conquered my 2D demon and started playing 2D games, and now I'm starting to figure out that sometimes it is better to play a 2D game with characters that has good personalities, and also it has a very excellent plot, a very excellent storyline, and also very astounding music, rather than playing a 3D game in which it has none of that. Alright? So pretty much I learned my lesson on 2D and 3D games. Alright. But anyway, let me go to the graphics of Final Fantasy VI. They were really, really jaw-dropping for its time, though. Alright, because many SNES games just didn't have graphics like that. Well, Super Metroid has some pretty excellent graphics to it, but it really don't beat the graphics of Final Fantasy VI, though. Alright. Also, Final Fantasy VII, you had pre-rendered graphics. And also, according to some pre-rendered graphics, the character design, in which they did like these deformed papier-mâché looking things, and they didn't look too good, especially with the pre-rendered backgrounds, and the pre-rendered backgrounds just wasn't realistic. And I'm here to tell you that a year before Final Fantasy VII was released, you had Resident Evil. Now, I understand that Resident Evil isn't a role-playing game, but it still had something in common with Final Fantasy VII. It had pre-rendered graphics. And those pre-rendered graphics in Resident Evil looked even better than it did in Final Fantasy VII. It looked more photorealistic. And the characters fit very well to backgrounds in that game. But in Final Fantasy VII, it's not much of that. Alright. So, you people are right. Final Fantasy VII is kinda overrated. It's not a bad game. It's a good game, but it's just a little overrated. Okay. And I just hope that the Final Fantasy VII fanboys don't get on my case about this, because I'm just trying to tell my opinion here, okay, about the two games. And no, I'm not a Final Fantasy VI fanboy, nor am I a Final Fantasy VII fanboy. I like both of the games, but somehow I just prefer Final Fantasy VI because it had a better storyline, better music, pretty much better everything. Alright? So, I'm really not here to attack Final Fantasy VII. I'm just saying it's not as good as people think it is. I mean, play Final Fantasy VI. Okay? You tell me that their storyline is not as good as the one in Final Fantasy VII. Alright? Well, that's all for my argument on both of these games. I'm Sir Libel 1 signing off. Have a nice night.